Virtual reality is being used to help athletes come back to sport. With goggles, a 6-inch drop-off, 2 plates, and some cameras, researchers can tell whether you're prone to tear your ACL or not, but it's all easier said than done. This research is being led by Dustin Grooms, an associate professor who specializes in biochemistry and neuroscience. He specializes in brain rehabilitation and develops new therapies that targets how your brain changes after a knee or ligament injury. His biochemical tests involve measuring ground reaction force with 2 plates, which measures how hard athletes hit the ground and if they favor one leg or one side over the other.
It takes advantages of Newton's third law of motion, which is based on if you hit the ground, you get an equal and opposite force that comes and hits you. So Newton's third law of motion, that for every action is equal and opposite reaction. So we actually measure that force the ground hits you with, but you hit the ground with the force, right? So it's called a ground reaction force.
Grooms had a say in the college's state-of-the-art, near $500,000 biochemistry lab. It's the first renovation of the lab since the 1960s and 70s. Along with the 2 plates that measures ground reaction force, there are multiple cameras to capture motion.
So we have 12 what are called, the company that made them is Vicon, but there's several motion capture systems. And essentially they use red light or infrared light, and it reflects off markers that we place in very precise anatomical landmarks. And we could essentially reconstruct you in the computer. And by reconstructing you in the computer, we can know exactly how much you're loading each joint, how much range of motion you have, and then we can get all sorts of any data we want about how you're moving for any movement at any speed.
This specific data captures what the eyes can't see, and that's where the partnership with athletics comes into play. Grooms said it would be a shame to not use this lab clinically.
We will bring them over and we'll try to give them rehab targets. So if a kid's not loading his joint very well, or he's not producing force, or is he favoring his ankle over his hip, or whatever it may be, this allows us to be very specific and be very targeted. It allows us to capture things our eyes can't see.
Virtual reality comes into play by putting the recovering athlete into the setting in which they'll be performing tasks. So when they do come back to sport, they are more acclimated to perform. This therapy is done because when an athlete blows out their knee, they lose what's called proprioception, the one's own parts of the body and strength of effort while doing a task. Grooms has found that the brain then relies on vision for recovery, then these proprioceptors.
And so what we've essentially found is that your brain, to generate movement after an injury, rewires and it starts to use vision more for movement than this proprioceptive capability. Because vision is very accurate. But the problem is when you're Lindsey Vonn and you're skiing 1,000 miles an hour down the hill, you need all of your visual processing reaction time for that task, not to help you control your knee joint. You need to rely 100% on proprioception. You blow out your knee though, you do not have those proprioceptors. And so your brain rewires to use vision.
An athlete through virtual reality can then re-weight towards vision and less towards proprioception, because that sense is lost due to the nerve damage after injury.
And that's what a lot of players and athletes tell us, is that they always feel like something's a little bit missing or a little bit off still, even if they do all the therapy that we have today.
Even though ACL tears are still one of the most devastating injuries in sport, rehab developments keep getting stronger to get athletes back to sport and to make sure the future is always in motion.